From the outset, I want to reiterate that Aontú policy would be the building of a public hospital on public land. And we believe that both the Children's Hospital and the Maternity Hospital should have been tri-located on a hospital on the periphery of the M50. It is a big mistake for both of those hospitals to be located in the locations that they're being built in at the moment. And we believe that these hospitals should be run by the state. But we're in a situation where the government has to make a decision on the basis of an organic system that has grown over decades. And I believe at this stage that we need to actually go ahead and build a national maternity hospital as soon as we can. I want to thank the National Maternity Hospital for organising the briefing that it gave to the opposition parties in Holles Street last week, where the Minister and the Master of the hospital were present to take questions. And it's incredible, but Aontú was the only opposition party that attended that meeting. And given that this issue has consumed pretty much all of the bandwidth in this echo chamber for the last month, I would ask questions to why Sinn Féin, the Social Democrats, People Before Profit and the Labour Party didn't attend the Holles Street meeting to pose questions to the hospital itself. And the key questions for us in all of this is what's the cost to the health of mothers for each year that the building of a new maternity hospital is delayed. And that's a key issue. We want to know what are the number of wards that are operating at overcapacity right now in the National Maternity Hospital? What's the patient-to-doctor ratio, the patient-to-nursing ratio, the patient-to-consulting ratio? How many babies are in the neonatal intensive care unit versus what's the actual capacity of those particular units? We want to know how long does it take to cross the city of Dublin from Holles Street to St Vincent's Hospital in an ambulance on an international rugby Saturday if a mother is suffering from a life-threatening emergency. That's the key question that's in front of us at the moment. And we also want to know how long would it take to start from scratch to build another maternity hospital in another location if this deal collapsed, because there's a significant chance that this deal could have collapsed. And if we're going back to the drawing board, we need to know how long it's going to take. Is it 10, 15 or 20 years before such a hospital would be built? These are the critical life and death issues that should be at the centre of the debate, but they haven't been at the centre of the debate whatsoever over the last number of months. And it never ceases to amaze me here that if there's a choice between a bread and butter or a health issue on one hand or a culture war on the other hand, that most parties of the left will go to the culture war like a moth to a flame. And people I talk to at home are consumed by the fact that there's 1 million people on hospital waiting lists, many for years, that there are hundreds of people on trolleys each and every day, that A&E delays are now the worst on record, and that seriously ill people are waiting 13 hours for admission into those A&Es, that we have a mental health pandemic in this country, and that hospitals had claims for 105,000 mistakes last year. Now, you'd have to be on a pretty high income level or a gold-plated insurance policy before that these health concerns will be relegated below to whether or not there's a crucifix in a hospital or not. You'd have to be fairly well off and fairly good access to health care for those issues to mean less than whether or not there's a crucifix in a hospital or not. It's astounding that Peter Boylan's tweet last night made the big reveal on Twitter that there's a chaplaincy in St Vincent Hospital, and this chaplaincy provides information on what TV channel that a person can access Mass on if they want. Is this where we are in Ireland in 2020? Forget about the 1 million people on hospital waiting lists. Hold the front page. There's a Mass in the chaplaincy in St Vincent's. It's incredible what's going on in this country at the moment. And I believe right under the surface of much of these debates there is an anti-Catholic invective. And I've heard some of the language that has been used on the radio, on the television, and indeed in the chambers in the last number of weeks. From Aon O'Riordan's desire to vet civil servants for their level of Catholic faith, to his call to get them out of the schools, to the Social Democrats' motion which says the Catholic ethos was a threat to women's healthcare, to Solidarity, People Before Profit blaming the education in Catholic schools for violence against women. All of these are untrue, and much of it borders on hate speech, in my view. For hundreds of years in this country, the health service and the education service was provided by the Catholic Church, and it was done by the volunteer work of men and women. Indeed, the chaplaincy, which was attacked by Peter Boylan's tweet, was one of those many organisations and chaplaincies which provided comfort and consolation at great risk to themselves, to believers and non-believers during the darkest days of the COVID crisis. And they were reminded that the only profession that was not thanked at the official government remembrance for COVID were the priests and nuns in this country who buried our dead, who consoled our families at great risks to themselves, while the people who wrote those speeches were working from home at the time. It's an incredible situation. If you want to find Catholic ethos in this country, look no further to Sister Stan, Brother Kevin, Father Peter McVerry and Sister Concilio. These are the people who are picking up the tab in areas of government neglect. Priests, parish and religious people right across the country are moving mountains to help refugees fleeing the Ukraine and sending supplies to the Polish border. There have been great wrongs that have been carried out by the Church in the past, but there has been great good delivered for generations too. And for every wrongdoer, there were dozens of good people doing the best that they could for the right reasons. And there's hardly a family in this state that has not benefited from Catholic healthcare or education in the last century. Remember, in the darkest parts of our institutional past, the state was equally culpable in those situations. Now, our healthcare service has grown organically into a pluralist model. Voluntary organisations with different ethos have in the main built a health service that we have today. Now, Ireland should be a pluralist republic. Catholic, Protestant and dissenters should have the right to be who they are without fear or favour from the state. Pluralism makes Ireland richer, stronger and more diverse as well. Now, I hear parties saying that the ground should be gifted to the state. Sinn Féin has well over 100 properties in the state at the moment. I would suggest that maybe Sinn Féin gift some of their properties to the state. See, the thing about it is, it's easy to be generous with other people's property. It's much too easy. And people shouldn't ask others to do what they won't do themselves as well. My whole worry about this issue at the moment is that this could be delayed for another 15 years. It is right and proper to ask the questions. It is important that we test this contract to the full extent. But if we see a situation where there is no evidence proffered to why it should be stopped, and it is stopped, I think that the mothers and women of Ireland will suffer as a result. And one term that I have a difficulty that's been cited over and over again in this debate is the issue of whether or not it's clinically appropriate. Now, what does clinically appropriate mean? It means professionally recognised standard of medical care. All hospital decisions should be based on whether something is clinically appropriate or not. For if you delete the word clinical appropriate, it means that an ideology or a religion or some other issue has to come in on top of it. But the idea to say that doctors should make ideological decisions, should make religious decisions, and should ignore the clinical appropriateness of a decision is absolutely hard to believe. People are asking that clinically inappropriate decisions will be made in hospitals. And what we need to do as a state is to make sure that the highest standard of science and medical knowledge is at the heart of the decisions that we make. The truth of the matter is that doctors and healthcare professionals that I have spoken to are really frustrated with regards to the language that has been used about their ability to provide services. If you go to anybody in Holles Street or the National Maternity Hospital or St Vincent's, they're phenomenally frustrated at their professionalism, which has been undermined wholesale repeatedly in the debates that have been had over the last number of months on this issue. Now, Aontú is a human rights party. We believe first and foremost that the health of the mother and the life of the mother should be protected in every single circumstance. After that, we believe that the lives and the health of the sons and daughters should be protected as well, if possible. And we're basically looking at a situation where Fine Gael TDs and senators have been coming out, some of them to say that they kind of oppose this deal. I believe it's deeply hypocritical. This is Fine Gael's baby. It has been promised for years. The real questions that I believe as a Dáil we should be asking is, why are we talking about something that was first announced in 2008 and again in 2013? Why is there a cost increase from 150 million to over 800 million on this particular project? Why are the private clinics that are already attached to Holles Street, are they going to be shifted onto the site? But none of this information is being tested and teased properly because of ideological predisposition in relation to this battle.